Today's lesson is about a word we hear a lot in church. You're familiar with the word, and that is glory. We're going to talk about God's glory today. If you were if you were asked to define the word glory, what does glory mean? And to make it even a little easier, let's say we're trying to define that to a third grader. On a third grade level, how would you define what the word glory means? So by the end of this lesson today, you will be able to define that word. And I pray you will have a much, much deeper understanding of that word. You'll know what that word means, and you will know what God's glory has to do with you. So in the Old Testament, a word that's translated glory had the meaning of heavy or weighty. And so you might think greatness. In the New Testament, the word often translated glory means something being bright or shining. And so it's visible. It's something of God's. When we're talking about God's glory, it's visible. And so one way that you might define it, this is the best that I've heard, and it is the visible beauty of the greatness of God. Glory, God's glory, is the visible beauty of the greatness of God. It's all that He is. It's His character, His holiness, His awesomeness. It represents Him. It's visible in something that we could see or witness. Ladies, if I ask you to think of something that is glorious just on a human level, and if a lady is shopping for a ring, in particular an engagement ring, or if a boyfriend is shopping for an engagement ring, and a woman is given a diamond ring to a woman, that is glorious. It's beautiful, and it represents something. It's very significant. Men, I try to find a picture. Some of you guys that enjoy fishing, if you see, I just wanted to show you a picture that would, bring some emotion to you. As a man who enjoys fishing, you see something like this, you're ready to go. So we understand when we see things that mean something to us, and they represent something that's important to us. And so today we're going to talk about God's glory. Turn in your Bible to Exodus chapter 33. There's a story in the Old Testament about God's glory. It's pretty amazing. It involves Moses, and this is when Moses is leading the Israelites to the Promised Land. They're about to they're about to start this journey. But God has been leading them out of Egypt for long enough to be frustrated with them, because the Israelites were, to put it bluntly, they were a bunch of complainers. And so in Exodus 33:1, God tells Moses, I want you to go to the Promised Land, the land I promised you, but I'm not going to go with you. Look at how he says that, verse 2. I'll send an angel before you. I will drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go up among you, lest I consume you on the way, for you are a stiff-necked people. Has your mom ever been so frustrated with you that she said, you just need to go. Just get out of my sight for a minute so I don't kill you? That's what God's doing here with the Israelites, and Scripture says they mourned. They grieved at that. And Moses, he was really distraught. He's thinking, God, who are you going to send? And so in verse 13, Moses says, if I found favor in your sight, please show me now your ways, that I may know you. In order to find favor in your sight, consider too that this nation is your people. Moses says, show me your ways that I may know you. Do you want to know God? And when you think about that question, do I want to know God? Well, we'd probably get a lot of head nods if I asked you to nod your head if you agree. Do I really want to know God? That's a little different question. Do I really want to know God? Is there a way that I can know God? Do I really want to know God? If I don't really want to read His Word, do I really want to know God? Well, Moses says, God, I want to know you. I want to know your ways. I want to know how to please you. So God says, okay, I will go. Verse 17, the Lord said to Moses, this very thing that you've spoken, I will do. For you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name. Moses said, please show me your glory. It's kind of weird to me because Moses has already seen the 10 plagues. That's God's power. He has seen symbols like the cloud by day, fire by night. It's like, he's kind of seen God, but he wants more. In verse 19, God answers and says, I'll make all my goodness pass before you. So notice God uses interchangeably here goodness and glory. Moses has said, show me your glory. God says, I'll show you my goodness. God's goodness. And will proclaim before you my name, the Lord. That's Yahweh. And I'll be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and show mercy on whom I will show mercy. So God says He's going to show His glory, and He also describes some of His glory, the beauty of His nature. 2 words that are pretty important to us, grace and mercy. Grace is where you receive something you didn't deserve. Mercy is where you don't receive something bad that you do deserve. Those are 2 amazing qualities of God. But then God says, I'll show you, but you cannot see my face. Man cannot see my face and live. In verse 21, the Lord said, behold, there's a place by me where you shall stand on the rock while my glory passes by. I'll put you in a cleft of the rock, and I'll cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen. And then in Exodus 34, verse 5, the Lord descended in the clouds, stood with him there, proclaimed the name of the Lord. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty. So God shows His glory here. He describes His glory, the beauty of His qualities. And look at what happens to Moses. Verse 29, Moses came down from Mount Sinai. Moses didn't have a mirror, It's important here. He comes down with 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand. He came down from the mountain. Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone because he had been talking with God. Aaron and all the people of Israel saw Moses, and behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come near him. It's amazing. He saw God's backside, his back, and it was so much that his face, Moses' face, glowed so much the people were afraid. Isn't that amazing? That God's glory is so much that if you just got a glimpse of His back, your face would shine. It's hard to imagine. Well, the people put a veil on, they wanted Moses to put a veil on his face out of fear, and then we'll see in a minute they had another reason there was another reason that veil remained on Moses' face. But in John, let's flip to the New Testament. In John, we read something about Jesus. And chapter 1, verse 14 says, the Word, that's talking about Jesus, became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen His glory. Glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. And then Hebrews goes on to say, Hebrews 1:3, He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of His nature, and He upholds the universe by the word of His power. Now, make a note in your mind of that last part. He upholds the universe by the word of his power. That'll mean something here in a minute. But notice these two scriptures say Jesus brought that glory of God because he is God. He's the exact imprint of the Father. And that beauty, the beauty of God's qualities that's visible, that's seen in Jesus. In fact, Revelation talks about it, says about heaven, says the city has no need of sun or moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and its lamp is the Lamb. You ever seen things that were so amazing that you just wanted to just look at it a while? A newborn baby is that way. I remember when we went to see, when I saw the Grand Canyon years ago, people had talked about the Grand Canyon. They're like, yeah, it's a big hole in the ground, no big deal. I don't know. It was a big deal to me. I could have, when our group left, I could have stayed. It's just amazing. You ever seen the ocean? If you've had the privilege to be able to see the ocean, it's amazing. We see things that God has made. If you've ever seen the Rocky Mountains, just looking at things it has an impact on us because we're seeing what God has made. We're seeing a bit of his glory. And I think in heaven, when we get to heaven, if that is granted to us, to be faithful till the end, and we are in heaven, I think we'll just sit there and stare a while and be speechless and be overwhelmed by the beauty of the Father and of the Son. Well, flip to John 11. Remember Lazarus, the story of Lazarus when, his sisters, Mary and Martha, they call for Jesus. Lazarus is sick. Come heal him. And Jesus does not. He lets him die. He's in the grave 4 days. And Jesus comes and he has this conversation with Martha. And in chapter 11:38, Jesus moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he's been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" And so they did, witnessing a true resurrection from the dead. This man was dead, been dead, and he's raised from the dead by God's power. And they see that glory of God. So how do we see God's glory? Psalm 19 verse 1 talks about the heavens declare the glory of God. The sky above proclaims its handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There's no speech, nor are there words, whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Verse 4, reading on, says, "In them he has set a tent for the sun, which comes out like a bridegroom leaving his chamber, and like a strong man runs its course with joy. Its rising is from the ends of the heavens, and its circuit to the end of them. There is nothing hidden from its heat." It is amazing. Sunsets there are no two sunsets alike, and the beauty of a sunset is pretty amazing. The colors, it's different depending on where you are in the world. The terrain makes it a little different. But sunsets are captivating. And so this passage just talks about the glory of the sun and what the sun does. And we know from if there are too many days of cloudiness, that actually affects people psychologically. It affects them emotionally. The sun, just what the sun does in routine ways is amazing. And, I've said before that many of you have been in nature. In fact, sometimes people will say they'll say, I feel closest to God out, in a deer stand or out on the lake fishing or whatever it is. And aside from the fact that we're not supposed to miss this to be out enjoying God's creation, the truth is God's creation is a bit of God's glory. And when you feel something amazing spiritually, when you see it and you're connected to God and in awe of the Maker, that is God honored. It's true. It's right. We should feel that way. It's amazing, and you cannot fully explain it. You can't explain that to a third grader. You can try, but we don't fully understand it ourselves. Sometimes we see God's creation, and it leaves us speechless. In fact, Romans talks about it, Romans 1:20. It says his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature. So we can't see God, but look at this, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. And we can see that. So they're without excuse. People who don't believe in God, maybe they haven't been taught, had Scripture brought to them. Maybe they haven't had certain opportunities. Well, can they see the world? Can they see creation? If they can see creation, they can see God. I want to talk about this for a minute. I want to show you some pictures from this recent mission circling the moon. This is Artemis 2. And this crew of 4 astronauts, they went, and you may be up on the news, but if you're not, we had a crew that went around the moon and saw the backside of the moon. I didn't know this, but the moon, the moon kind of pivots around the earth. It doesn't spin. And so we don't see the other side. It's kind of weird to me. I don't totally get that. But we had a crew that went and saw some pretty amazing things. And this scene where they saw the earth come up, over the horizon of the moon, what you would call an earth rise, was pretty impactful on the crew, the astronauts. This is a female member of the crew. I like this picture because, I don't know, to me it captures the wonder of what they could see. And that's not a small thing. I mean, these are scientists, these are highly successful, intelligent people, but it's amazing the things they see. And then this picture is something I had never thought about before. So the sun is behind the moon here. The earth is behind the astronauts. And, of course, there's a glow. You get that. But notice on the left side, you can see part of the moon that's facing the astronauts. That light is not coming from the sun. The sun light does not bend around the moon. Make sense? The light that you see on the left side of the moon there is, you've heard of moonlight? That's earth light. It's the sun's rays bouncing off the earth and hitting the moon in a way to illuminate that part of the moon, earth light. That's, I don't know that surprised them, but that's never been seen to my knowledge. It's a bit amazing. I found that intriguing. Earth light. Well, the crew, you have Victor Glover, the black gentleman, if you don't know, is a member of the Church of Christ in Houston. He was the pilot. You have the woman, Christina Cook, mission specialist, the Canadian specialist, Jeremy Hansen, and then the commander, Reed Wiseman. And I want to show you something Reed Wiseman said. He talks about kind of the whole experience and coming back to Earth, and he's an atheist. He identifies as non-religious, this man, Reed Wiseman. But listen to what he said about the events that took place?
I'm not really a religious person, but there was just no other avenue for me to explain anything or to experience anything. So I asked for the chaplain on the Navy ship to just come visit us for a minute. And when that man walked in, I'd never met him before in my life, but I saw the cross on his collar, and I broke down in tears. It's very hard to fully grasp what we just went through. And in these short, you just said it's been a week since we've been back, but it's been a week of medical testing, physical testing, doctors, science objectives. We have not had that decompression. We have not had that reflection time. So I'm basing this on what we saw. And when the sun eclipsed behind the moon, I think all four of us, I turned to Victor and I said, I don't think humanity has evolved to the point of being able to comprehend what we are looking at right now, because it was otherworldly. It was amazing.
You know, he can't, he's an atheist. He can't describe the impact of what he saw, but what he saw was God's glory. He saw a bit of God's glory that people don't see, people don't get to see. He saw things that you cannot explain, and it impacted him in a way he could not explain. And God willing, maybe this will point him toward God, the Creator, because we do have the explanation. But I love this because you and I have experienced a bit of what he's describing. If you've ever seen something that moved you in a spiritual way, and you thought, wow, God, you are amazing, and you see God not directly, but indirectly, and that's his glory. So let's go to, Paul talks about it in 2 Corinthians 3, verse 4. Paul says, such is the confidence that we have through Christ toward God, not that we are sufficient in ourselves to claim anything is coming from us, but our sufficiency is from God. Who has made us sufficient to be ministers of a new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. Now, if the ministry of death, carved in letters on stone, came with such glory that the Israelites could not gaze at Moses' face because of its glory, which was being brought to an end, will not the ministry of the Spirit have even more glory? So it's saying that the glory of the new covenant that we're under is much more glorious than the old. For if there was glory in the ministry of condemnation, the ministry of righteousness must far exceed it in glory. Indeed, in this case, what once had glory has come to have no glory at all, because the glory that surpassed it. For what was being brought to an end came with glory, much more will what is permanent have glory. Since we have such a hope, we are very bold, not like Moses, look at this, who would put a veil over his face so that the Israelites might not gaze at the outcome of what was being brought to an end. So Moses' face became glowing because he got a glimpse of God. And it glowed. Like we have things that glow in the dark. We have a cover for one of our remotes at home, remote controls that glows in the dark. Okay, it does not glow forever. Makes sense? We understand how things that glow, they absorb some light and they'll glow for a time. And that's what happened with Moses. But look at this second reason he covered his face, because he didn't want the people to see that it was fading. And the glory that we see of God doesn't fade. It gets stronger as we grow closer to God, leading up to the day that we are with God and we see his full glory. So you and I, we experience a glory that should shine from us, and the closer we get to God, the more it should shine. So look down in verse 17. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And we all with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another, for this comes from the Lord who is the Spirit. So you and I, Christians, we see God and we see Christ, and we're being transformed into that same image from one degree of glory to another, meaning the Spirit of God is trying to change you. if you're a Christian, a baptized believer, the Spirit lives in you, and the Spirit has a job every day to try to make you more like Christ. He's trying to change you. And sometimes you may experience that, and you may experience a war within you because your flesh doesn't want to change. Your flesh likes what you like, and mine likes what I like. But the Spirit of God is trying to change us. We live in a world that says you be you, and our God says, no, you be like me. Because God is glorious. God is holy. And so you remember the story. I want to tell you a story, but I want to set it up by reminding you that we have Jesus tells about the rich man and Lazarus, and it's a different Lazarus than the one he brought back from the dead. Rich man and Lazarus, this poor man, Lazarus, sat at the rich man's gate, and he just wanted a crumb. You know, he just wanted a little bit of food. He was very hungry, and the rich man wouldn't give him any. Well, then they both die, and the rich man goes to torment. Lazarus goes to paradise, and the rich man asked Lazarus, who's at Abraham's side, you remember what he asked him? Could you send Lazarus over? I'm so hot in torment. Could you have him just touch my tongue with a drop of water? What that tells us is, when you're hurting and struggling, the rich man was so much in torment that just a drop would have been relief. Okay? And what I want us to think about is when someone is hurting and struggling, the smallest act of Christ-likeness is amazing. Okay? So, 47 years ago, I would have been, I think, 8 years old, and we lived in Shakota. My dad was the preacher there, and he had been the preacher maybe about a year at the time. And there was a family there that, like our family, that had 3 kids, and their oldest child was my age, daughter. And the family is, the parents, Rick and Sue Smith, were the parents. Now, you don't know them, but I want to tell you about their story. So they had 3 children. Their youngest, Bradley, he was 4 at the time, and he was diagnosed with leukemia. And so he was receiving treatment, but it was not successful, and he was going to pass. And so there was a time there that Bradley's mom would be with him in Oklahoma City in the hospital. And the father, Rick, would be home with their other 2 children, and my dad would go check on him. And so Rick talks about that and explains some of this to me, but he said it meant so much to him that Dad would come and try to comfort him. And when I asked Dad about it, he said, I didn't feel like I did much. There's not much you can do, but I tried to comfort him. I would pray with him. So you fast forward. Now, I barely knew about all that happened there. So they lost their youngest child. It was very difficult. They continue to grieve to this day. And all these years later, now I've gone back I go back home periodically. Just recently did a gospel meeting in Shakota. And when I go home, when I see Rick, the dad, he taught me as a teenager in Bible class. So I've known him. I like him. But what I notice about him is he loves Dad. Loves him. And I've always kind of understood that a little bit because, Dad was the preacher there for a long time. Dad is a godly man. He served that congregation, so they love him. I get that. But this guy, Rick, he's a different kind of, fan of my father. He loves my father in a way I didn't understand until recently when I heard of what all happened. We just sang a song that said, "Have you ever stood in the family with the Lord there in your midst, seen the face of Christ on your brother? Then I say you've seen Jesus my Lord." And in that most difficult time, that father saw the face of Christ on my dad. He saw a bit of God's glory in that comfort. And I want to tell you, we get to show God's glory to the world and to the bride anytime we show an act of kindness, an act of thoughtfulness, mercy, comfort, any of that. And if you ever know that someone is struggling, I want to tell you, if you know that they're hurting or they're lacking, don't hesitate to go. Don't hesitate to call. Do something. Even and especially when you don't know what to do. Tell them you care about them. Tell them you're sorry for their loss. Just go look them in the face and let them see God's glory in your love for them that comes from God. Let them see it. Just look them in the eye. When we have those opportunities, we need to take them. And your takeaway today, here's what I want you to take with you. The Spirit is trying to change you into something amazing. It's Christ-like, and that is God-like. I mean, that's exactly like God. The Spirit's trying to change us as close and as much like Christ as He can. Are we resisting? Or are we embracing that? We need to be God's glory for this world. So we're going to sing a song that challenges us. Here is my heart. I encourage you to sing this honestly. Ask God, invite God through His Spirit to change you and make you more glorious so God can be seen as more glorious. We're going to sing this, and if you have a need, we'd love to help you this morning. You may want us to pray for you. You could come forward. We'd love to do that. You may want a more private, personal prayer with one of our shepherds. They and their wives will be at the doors, and they can pray with you in a more personal way. You may want to give your life to Christ and let this change begin today in the waters of baptism. If you have a need, please respond while we stand and sing.
Merciful Savior, glorious Redeemer, slow in your anger, rich in your love.